Look, honestly, all personal bias aside, you cannot beat an Apex trigger for consistency, reliability, and performance. They really are the best thing that's out there. Over 20 years making triggers, working on triggers, they're really the only ones that I trust in my guns.
My big complaint with the M&P competitor, the trigger, well, Apex has finally finished their testing process and have released the Metal M&P 2.0 flat-faced forward set trigger set. Just as expected, it's taken this competitor to a whole new level. Part of me wishes that Apex had released this thing sooner, but I kind of understand why it took so long. You guys want to know why I stick with Apex triggers in my guns? Well, it's kind of a trust thing. Now, sure, I became an affiliate with Apex, I don't know, earlier this year, and so if you buy anything through them and you use 360TS as your code, you're going to save a couple of bucks. They're going to give me a couple of bucks. The lights are going to stay on here in the office, and I'm going to be able to continue to make content. This really isn't about that, though. If I didn't trust Apex triggers, I wouldn't have them in so many of my guns. If I didn't trust those triggers, I wouldn't be carrying my guns that have Apex triggers in them in the appendix position. If I didn't have total and complete trust in Apex, I would not be recommending them to friends, family, you guys, my viewers. Your safety is as important to me as my own, and with over 20 years in the business, Apex has earned a reputation for reliability, performance, and safety. These days you have a lot of choices when it comes to aftermarket triggers. Go ahead and use whatever brand it is that you trust. Just take a second and ask yourself, why do you trust them? This trigger for the Metal M&P, it has some slight changes to it versus the standard trigger for the polymer M&P, because the Metal M&P is just slightly different. What's important about it is that this trigger is safe. I know that it's safe because Apex does a lot of testing. They drop the hell out of their guns while they're testing to make sure that these triggers are going to work like they're supposed to. This is why sometimes it really feels like it takes so long for them to launch a trigger for a new gun. I was sitting there thinking to myself, what the hell? Why does the site say that the standard flat-face trigger isn't certified for use with the Metal M&P? I just so happen to have an extra M&P trigger kit, so I went ahead and decided to install it and test it on the Metal M&P. Really, I just wanted to see how it would run. I'm going to tell you this right now, if Apex tells you that something isn't compatible or isn't certified for use yet, you should definitely listen to them. Yes, the trigger mostly worked, but it felt weird. Something really wasn't quite right in the break. It felt really strange, and I only took it out for one session at the range before I went home, pulled it out, and went right back to the stock trigger. One of the reasons I wanted an Apex in the competitor is this piece right here, the forward set sear actuator. That little guy right there is what reduces take-up in your trigger. And to the best of my knowledge, there aren't any other aftermarket triggers that are offering that piece right there. Really, it's a pretty simple fix that Smith & Wesson could have done with this gun to make it so much better right out of the box. Now, having more take-up, it's not necessarily a bad thing with like a duty gun or, a carry gun. And in fact, this 10mm M&P that I have here, this has all the stock internals and it's quite a bit of take-up. I don't necessarily mind that with this gun because this is kind of a hiking gun for me. This isn't something that I need a reduced amount of take-up for. That gun certainly isn't designed and marketed around, competition use where you would want less take-up. Really, for inexperienced shooters, for those who are still trying to gain confidence in, carrying a loaded weapon, I would say that the excess take-up that the M&Ps have right out of the box is probably a good idea. Now, if you train regularly, you may want to step it up a bit. That forward set sear actuator drastically reduces the amount of pull you need to get from the start position to the wall. This is going to help you increase your rate of fire. Now, you can go ahead and shoot fast with a stock trigger. Nobody's saying that you can't. The thing is, though, getting rid of all of that take-up really does take the experience and the smoothness of shooting to a whole different level. All right, we got our apex trigger here, and as you can see, there isn't a lot of take-up. It doesn't take much to get it up to the wall, which is nice and firm. Basically no over travel. And then our reset, nice and short. Let's try that again. Almost no take-up here. Wall. Reset. Alright, just for comparison, I went ahead and brought out the 10mm M&P. This one has the stock trigger and internals. Those are all the same components used on the M&P 2.0 competitor. So this is pretty similar to what the competitor had originally. And you can see that's quite a bit of take up there. Then we can go ahead and we can see the reset. It's not too far, but if we compare that to the apex, again, that's not much take up at all. And that reset is really short reset. People ask me all the time, have you tried this trigger? Have you tried that trigger? Will you ever try this trigger or that trigger? I always go through and I check them out, and generally speaking, almost all of them, what you get is a trigger shoe and a lot of times just a return spring. The sear actuator, though, that's where the magic happens, and Apex seems to be the only company that really understands that. That's what 20 years in specializing does. It gives you perspective and insight that other companies just don't have. People always want to know what parts I'm using so that they can go ahead and replicate the results that I'm getting. So let's go ahead and run through what exactly I'm using from the Apex kit and stock on this gun. Now, obviously, I'm using the flat-faced trigger shoe from the kit. For the return spring, I am using the factory return spring. I'm trying to dial this thing in right about 3.5 pounds or so. Apex does send this handy little guide with the kit, and it gives you a breakdown of what springs and parts to use to get whatever trigger pull weight you're looking for. That, of course, is great for people who aren't comfortable with a lighter trigger and would actually like a stiffer, more heavier trigger. The guide gives you directions on how to get your trigger weight all the way up to, I think it's like 5.5 pounds if that's what you're looking for. Next thing on the list, I am using the Apex sear spring and plunger. Of course, I'm using the forward set sear actuator as well as the Apex sear. Apex does include a striker block and spring. I'm not sure how much of a difference that makes, but I did go ahead and throw that into the gun as well. The end result is a smooth and consistent trigger pull, very little take up, and a crisp 3.5 pound break, maybe a little over 3.5 pounds. I expect that the more rounds that I put through this gun, that's going to, smooth up and lighten maybe just a little bit. That's how it goes. I think right now I've got close to 2,000 rounds through this gun. I'll hit the 2,000 round mark really soon, and I should see that lighten up a bit. Now look, I realize some people do want a heavier trigger because, they're using their M&P for other stuff, whether it's duty use or carry use, they're not using it for, competition or range use like I plan on using this gun. The Apex kit comes with everything you need and directions to get you exactly the trigger that you are looking for. For me, this trigger really is as good as it gets. That's so much better. It really is. I know I went hard on the trigger situation with the competitor, but you can't know how great an Apex trigger on an M&P is until you've actually put some rounds through one. A smoother functioning trigger gives you more possibility for higher levels of accuracy. Not that you can't be accurate with a factory trigger, especially one that is well broken in. There is, though, a difference between a well broken in factory M&P trigger and an Apex. Shortened take up and reset help increase the rate by which you are able to take your shots, especially follow-up shots. That shortened take up also decreases the chances of movement of the gun while you're taking your shot. This isn't a 1911 or 2011, but many of the benefits of those style of trigger can be gained with putting an Apex on an M&P. If you want to take your M&P, and specifically your Metal M&P, to the next level, you need to invest into an Apex trigger. There's no getting around it. Feel free to use whatever brand of trigger that you want, but the brand of trigger that I trust my life with is Apex. That's not just the Metal M&P either. If I'm using an aftermarket trigger on any gun and it's for longer than, a simple test and review, it's either Apex or it's nothing. I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Remember, have a qualified gunsmith handle any work that you aren't personally comfortable doing. When it comes to firearms, there is no shame in spending a few bucks to have a licensed, qualified professional do a little bit of work for you here and there, just to be on the safe side. That's it. I'm out. I will see you guys back here real soon.